Hello, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome to Building Diversity in Esports. The point of this webinar, we want to do it more like a podcast, just a conversation. I'm joined here with Charlie and Ashley. We'll go a little bit more into introductions here. So my name is Tanner Litchfield. I'm with Micro K-12. We sell technology to schools across Washington, Idaho, Oregon, even some in Montana. And we do a lot with esports now. So for the furniture, hardware, we want to be that resource for all you. So we'll start with a little bit of why we're interested in esports. And to keep it fun, I want to include what we're doing in the pandemic to keep our life moving or to stay busy. So as for me in esports, I've been a casual gamer since I was in 6th grade. My game of choice is Call of Duty. I've loved playing Call of Duty back when MW2, getting those nukes, those are the days. But for the pandemic, I moved a few months ago. And so a lot of my time, my free time, staying busy, trying to stay sane is just projects around my house. So that's for me. I'm going to turn the time over to Charlie Morrow from Peninsula College, and she'll go through the same thing.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Charlie Morrow. I'm the esports head coach for Peninsula College over in Port Angeles, Washington. Prior to that, I was a Super Smash Brothers Melee competitor for about a decade, also organized plenty of tournaments for that game as well. I've been a consistent advocate for gender equity in esports and Smash as well. Being one of the few women in the scene, I was constantly championing for inclusion and equity. I also have a master's in performance psychology with a focus in esports as well. So for the during the pandemic and these crazy times, I've actually been learning Korean. So I've been doing that for the last few months, and it's safe to say I can say hello, goodbye, and can count to 10.
That's awesome. Alrighty, Ashley, you want to give a brief introduction on what you're doing in the pandemic, and also how your interest in esports and where that stemmed from?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I've been a casual gamer for years, as long as I can remember. Love Super Smash Bros. On the GameCube and Halo 3 on the Xbox, and now I'm an Overwatch player for Peninsula College. I'm also the team captain, and I've been on the team for a year. During the pandemic, I've been staying busy riding my bike on the waterfront trail here in town and hanging out with my cats.
There we go. I need to stop muting myself so much. It makes it a little bit more choppy. But so Ashley is a little bit a step up from casual gamer. I don't want to say I'm a casual gamer and then Ashley is a casual gamer over here competing in college. So I'm sure she does amazing, as well as Charlie. But just a quick introduction to this webinar. So there's obviously a problem with diversity in esports, and that's what this webinar is about and how we can go about this problem. And just introducing it, I'm part of the majority. I'm a white male, and so I don't have a lot of personal anecdotes to this. I'm a student. I'm always learning. Charlie and I have had a lot of good conversations in regards to this. We're always going to be students. We always need to be learning, and that's okay. So hopefully we can all learn something from this webinar and move towards to making esports equal and having a fair playing field for men and women. So with that being said, that's the problem we want to address. Charlie is our expert among the group. So I want her to dive a little bit more into the problem, and we'll get going from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, really quick, I just want to say, Tanner and Micro K-12, thank you so much for this opportunity. Just being able to bring both myself and Ashley out and say, hey, like, we want to learn more about this from your perspective it's the first step. It's, amazing. And, one really quick disclaimer that I want to give before diving into this is I personally can only speak on gender diversity, gender equity. There are gamers of all different backgrounds that experience some kind of inequality. A trans gamer's experience is going to be different from mine. A Black gamer's experience is going to be different from mine. A gamer with disabilities is going to have a different experience. So in order to really understand those experiences and what we can do to make sure that, again, as Tanner put it, it's an equitable and level playing field, we really need to be listening to those specific people and really learning from them and listening to them as well. But, in the meantime, I'm definitely happy to touch on the gender diversity issues in esports, in terms of, women such as myself and as Ashley. So the big three things that I want to touch on are stereotypes, sexism, and inequality. So to start off with stereotypes, esports is definitely a boys club, and it has been for basically as long as it's been around. There's this stereotype of, gamers just being aggressive, nerdy dudes who live in their mom's basement, that kind of thing. That hurts women. That obviously hurts women because, it's that stereotype discludes the fact that women make up almost half of gamer populations. There have been studies that have shown that, women even put more time into games than males or than men who describe themselves as gamers. So, obviously, when there's this assumption that gamers are only dudes, they're only guys, that hurts and alienates us. So because of that, there's this inherent sexism as well. And I think with the whole Gamergate thing about a decade or so ago, that made it a lot worse too. And it, because of that, there's this persistent harassment both in casual gaming spheres and the more competitive, esports sectors as well. And, it has an incredibly wide range. It can be, just little comments in ranked games, it could be a nasty YouTube comment. And, it stems from that all the way up to death threats. Like I know women who have received death threats just for being in esports, just for speaking up. And so that's obviously not okay. And then, not only that, but women just in the games themselves, the representation there is incredibly weak. There are not many female characters, and most of them are kind of the more submissive secondary characters to men. And so, in general, you kind of see this nasty cycle where, there are men in these positions that make games for men that are consumed by men. And then that kind of tells the developers like, oh, these are for men. And the cycle repeats itself. And then finally, and so that's, a form of inequality. We don't get to see ourselves in these games. We don't get to see ourselves on stage or anything like that. And, when we do, there's often a lot of backlash. And, I've seen it over and over and over again whenever a woman has a high ranking position in esports or even in game development. People like to say that they only got the job because they're a woman. They got to meet those, what's the term? They have to meet those quotas. There's a very specific term I'm looking for and I'm blanking on it. So, it's a systemic thing, and it's been around for a very, very long time.
Yes. And I hope it's clear to everyone that there is a problem. And I wanted to include, if you're watching this from NCCE, it'll be a rebroadcast, but it'll be for the live NCCE event. We'll be having a Q&A at the end of this, and that goes for those who are watching live now too. Feel free to put the questions in. For the NCCE viewers, sorry, it's a tongue twister sometimes. You'll have moderators on the other end who will try and answer the questions to the best of their ability. And also Tanner, will be able to answer questions, and Charlie. So feel free to email us with those. But diving to the next step, Charlie and Ashley. So we have a lot of viewers, athletic directors, future esports coaches for the high school level who could be watching this. And so for those viewers or those who want to pass it on to future coaches, what advice could you give to them to help build a diverse esports team, and some things that coaches would do that they should avoid?
Yeah, so I can kind of touch on that first, and then maybe Ashley can kind of go more into what players can do and, team captains. So one of the first things that I would highly recommend is opening up women and gender minority events and making sure that they are run by women. So, when obviously we want, very diverse and equitable teams, but there has to be a genuineness about it. And, again, I think it's really important to include women in this process, appoint women as coaches, appoint women as assistant coaches, as recruitment coordinators, what have you, and include them in the conversation of how do we get more women involved. And, just from my experience in Smash, having women run events for women and, and non-binary people and trans women and men, having those events creates, I hate to use this term, but a safe space for women and gender nonconforming people to compete. And that, it gives them a space to not feel like they have a million eyes on them because they're not a man, And there's unfortunately, there's a lot of controversy surrounding women-only events, but frankly, I think it's kind of silly. And, it's, as long as you're using it as a recruitment tool, I personally don't see anything wrong with it. Another thing too is appointing, the women that you have on your team already, appoint them to leadership positions, provide them with opportunities to expand their skills, to expand on their leadership skills. I'm not going to say that, that's the only reason why I picked Ashley as a team captain. She's an incredible player. She's, a smart, empathetic leader. And, ultimately that's why I picked her as a team captain. But, just giving those opportunities to the women that you have already on your team is huge, I think personally. As far as, coaches are concerned, when you're arranging practices and all that, set very clear rules and boundaries for your players regarding harassment or the way that you talk or, things like that, to really, you want to set the expectation right away that you want an inclusive, equitable environment. And if they can't deal with that, then, there's the door. So a lot of that is leading by example and, just creating a safe and welcoming environment. Another thing you can do too is team up with the diversity initiatives and groups already in your school, already on your campus. For example, I'm going to give a shout out to Ralph Higaboom over at Grace Harbor Community College. He works alongside their LGBTQIA club over at Grace Harbor College, when doing their game nights. And so something like that can help so much, because that tells that group that is typically, let's be honest, typically excluded that, hey, you're welcome in our gamer space. We accept you for who you are. You know, you are totally included in this space. And so, you know, that's something that I want to do going forward. And that's something that I would encourage others to as well. So, you know, those are my big things, is just creating that safe environment, having those expectations, and letting your women be leaders, you know, giving them those opportunities to be leaders. One thing that I really do want to point out, though, you know, we bring up common pitfalls and stuff. I would say the biggest one is tokenizing. So, you know, there's kind of a balance between, you know, including women and including gender minorities, but you don't want to kind of like put them like on parade, you know, and say, look, this is our women, this is our woman gamer, this is our trans gamer. You know, you don't want to do that, because it can be clearly obvious when they're being treated differently. And, you know, unfortunately, when I was competing, I saw this a lot, where I would just be treated differently. It wasn't necessarily bad. It wasn't necessarily good either. And so, you know, when you're working through these initiatives, just keep that in mind. You know, you still want to treat them as people. You know, they're not a prop. They're not, you know, something that you can wave around and say, look, we're doing the thing. You know, you got to be genuine. And at the end of the day, like, women and trans gamers, non-binary gamers, like, we just want to play video games. We want to do our jobs. We want to compete just like any other, you know, cis male. Like, that's just what we want to do. So,
Charlie, I feel like this would be a good time for the story you shared with me yesterday.
yeah.
So I was gonna say this is a good time to fit it in, and I think this is a good learning lesson for a lot of people. So would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, no, I don't mind sharing it at all. And then after I do that, I can bounce it off to Ashley, and you know, she can kind of share her thoughts as well, you know, on the player end. So this is one of my favorite stories. So I was competing in a Smash Brothers Melee tournament in Portland, and it was one of the best tournaments I'd ever played in. I think I placed like top 25 out of like 150 players maybe. I almost beat the 4th ranked player in Oregon. I was feeling really good. You know, I had people coming up to me and saying, you know, oh my gosh, you did amazing, great job. You know, we're really proud of you. You've worked so hard. And then I had this guy come up to me, and he says the same thing. He's like, hey, you played really amazing. You know, I was really impressed. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And he says, yeah, so I saw that you know, I saw a girl playing Princess Peach, and I didn't really expect much, but you really exceeded my expectations. And I was like, okay. So, you know, a little context to that is there's this stereotype in Smash Brothers specifically that, you know, all girls just play Peach, and, you know, they just play for attention. And so that was a big stereotype that I personally was fighting when I was competing. And so just to kind of have that thrown back at me, it was like the single most backhanded compliment I had ever received. And at the time I was just like, okay.
And I told Charlie, when she told me this story, I said it was pretty much a sugar-coated way of saying that's pretty good for a girl.
Mm-hmm.
When Charlie, that wasn't good for a girl. She got top 25 out of 150 people. That's not good for a girl. That's good. That's just
exactly.
plain good. Like I'd probably get 150th out of that tournament. So that's the motive, or a message that needs to be clear is there needs to be equality. There needs to be a level playing field. It doesn't matter if Charlie's a woman playing a game as a Peach. She got top 25, and that's what needs to be recognized. So I loved that story, and I appreciate you sharing that, Charlie. And Ashley, did you want to bounce anything off of that, or will you please share something of your experience as a player with equality and the problem with diversity?
Yeah, just from a player's perspective, as far as what other teams that are being formed can do, and other stuff like that to make sure that they set up a good environment for their players. Something that coach has done is make us feel completely comfortable and safe in that environment. and I feel like I can come to her with any issues I might have. And being in that position of team captain was intimidating for me, but I've really wanted to step up in that role and make sure that anytime that coach isn't available to be watching over us, that I am making sure all our players are interacting with each other well, and stuff like that. So I feel comfortable calling them out if there are any issues that come along, or speaking with her in private afterwards. So that really needs to be something that's important from the coach's perspective, is listening to their players.
Awesome. And I wanted to add another note. Charlie and Ashley are pioneers in the esports industry in general for Washington. There's not a whole lot of collegiate teams in Washington right now, and Charlie's the coach of Peninsula College, and Ashley's one of the first players in Washington on the collegiate level, but also from the beginning of Peninsula College esports team, Ashley has been there. So I thought that was an awesome opportunity that we have Charlie and Ashley to join here, not only as their view on inclusion, but also as pioneers in the esports industry. So we're glad to have them. Charlie and Ashley, do you have anything else in general that you think our viewers could use?
So I just wanted to bounce off one more thing, as far as setting up expectations. I would really, really, really encourage you guys, or see, I almost did it. I would really want to encourage all of the ADs, coaches, etc., to sit down, again, setting up those expectations, sitting down with your male players, and saying, hold your friends accountable, not only in practices but outside of practice too. These are collegiate players, like they not only represent me or the program, they're representing what it means to be an esports athlete to people who, are still unsure about esports. And so, one thing, that I have a lot of guys come up to me, in Smash and say, what can I do to make this a safer place for women? What can I do to help you, basically? And the one thing that I tell them is hold your homies accountable. Hold your friends accountable. If your friend says something stupid and out of line, sexist, call them out on it. Say, hey, man, that's not cool. Hey, you shouldn't really say that. And so, I really want to set up that same expectation for my players. And I would encourage all the other coaches to do the same.
Of course. I love that. Ashley, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that covers it. Just whether or not you're at practice, you're on a team, whatever, you're playing casually, whatever. I'm just thinking on Overwatch of like all those guys that, could scream at you or this and that, say stupid stuff to you, and voice chat is just, try and let them know that it's not okay, and
Of course.
stand up for each other.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And then I never got to highlight this picture here on the top right, the Smash Sisters. Charlie started a tournament called Smash Sisters. Do you want to highlight a little bit about that, Charlie?
Yeah, actually, so I did want to make a quick correction. I did not start Smash Sisters.
Okay.
It's all good. No worries. I did
You helped run it?
Yeah, I helped with a couple of iterations. So Smash Sisters are a series of crew battles that are open to women and other gender minorities. So it's open to cis women, trans men, and non-binary folks. It was started by Lillian Chen and Emily Sun, who are two very good friends of mine, who I appreciate and love dearly. And so, it was the reason why Smash Sisters was started was, again, to have that safe space, that inclusive space where women can play with other women, and they're not under the, they don't have hundreds of men's eyes on them, kind of judging how good they are, or, you know, like what characters they're playing. You know, it's, they're basically, they have that stereotype that removed, and, you know, they're able to just play without worrying about how good they are or anything like that. And, you know, it's a guaranteed place where they can, you know, sort of enter the Smash scene and learn from it.
Of course.
You know, in a safe and comforting place. And, you know, one thing I wanted to bring up too, I was just reminded, one other big thing that coaches and, you know, athletic directors and the like can do are to seek out organizations that that encourage diversity. One in particular is called AnyKey, and AnyKey is freaking awesome. So their mission is to encourage diversity of all kinds in gaming spheres, particularly in esports. So they have something called the GLHF initiative. I don't think initiative's the right word, but the GLHF pledge. So basically what you do is you go online to their website, and there's a pledge that, you know, you say, I am going to hold my friends accountable. I'm going to refrain from using, you know, typical sexist, bigoted speech, so on and so forth. And you get a cool little like key logo on your Twitch username that comes up when you do Twitch chat. It's really cool. And, you know, in addition to that, they also do, oh, awesome. It's the pledges in the chat. Thank you, Ralph. One really cool thing about AnyKey as well, as they do research on, you know, topics of diversity. They actually helped with Smash Sisters a lot. So Smash Sisters is actually an AnyKey affiliate. And, you know, basically they're a voice that wants to support and uplift all gamers, you know, from diverse backgrounds, not just women. They do stuff for Black gamers. They do stuff for gamers with disabilities. It's really awesome.
Cool. Well, thanks for including that link in there, Ralph. We've heard amazing things about that, and I want to dive more into it. So now I want to go into the Q&A. We have about 5 to 6 minutes left. And as we go through the questions, I want to make sure our contact information is up here. If you want to continue the conversation, if you have any questions, hardware needs, furniture needs, I can be a resource to that. And if you want to continue the conversation with Charlie, she has her contact information there as well. So feel free to put your questions in the live Q&A. We do have one that came up. Charlie, I think you hinted at this already. So if you want to just add a couple sentences to it so we can keep moving. It says, how in K-12 can we get more girls interested in esports who may be hesitant thinking it's a boys club? And then there's actually another question that came in that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how are you promoting esports to women for this next season during the pandemic? So how are we going about bringing inclusivity to women in esports?
Yeah, so to touch on the first question, women-led events. You know, events for girls led by women. I think that is the biggest thing that you can do, because, you know, find a staff person, you know, or if you have a woman in your life that plays video games, that's really passionate about video games, you know, bring them on board and have them run an event open to just the girls. I think that'll be a really good way to kind of get them into gaming. You know, there are a lot of times, like I've definitely had this before where, you know, I wanted to participate in something, but I was nervous. You know, I was like, oh, you know, I don't want to face this. You know, I don't want a bunch of guys like looking down on me. And, you know, even now, like for games that I'm not as familiar in, like I would be way more comfortable entering an event with just women than an event that's co-ed. So start off with women-led events. You know, start off with women-only events, advertise to women and run by women. That's the most important part, I think. And then as far as, let's see, what was the other question?
Just like recruiting towards women for like during the pandemic. Let me read it. how are you promoting esports to women for this next season during the pandemic? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So my initial plan was to have, women only events. But of course this was pre-COVID. And so it's still something that I really want to do. Because it's still something that you can do even, during the pandemic. So, I would really like to be able to do that at some point. I'll be honest, I've just been more focused on general recruitment. I definitely whenever I have a woman who is interested, I will hone in on that, and I will say, I will make sure that you're going to have, a safe space. You're going to be inclusive. We have other girls on our team. You have me, so I really like to emphasize that to the girls who are interested, that, it is a goal of mine to make sure that you're having a safe and enjoyable experience. But, definitely, again, women only events. I think that is the biggest thing that you can do to encourage more girls, is to say, hey, we have this event that's just for you guys. You don't have to worry about boys making fun of you or judging you. Just come on in, and make it casual too. I think one other thing as well is, sometimes, I can speak from personal experience. Like sometimes, there's kind of a aversion to competitive events, just because you don't feel like you're good enough. And a lot of that is because, as girls, we're told we're not as good as boys, playing video games. So making it casual, I think, is a really good idea too. And just bringing them in and showing them that, we're here for you. We want to see you grow. We want to see you, become better players.
Of course. Thank you for that, Charlie. So we are wrapping up on time. I want to put in one last comment, just going off of what Charlie has said. If you are a coach and you're a male, try and find a volunteer who is a woman who can help lift up these women gamers and make them feel comfortable. I think that would go a long way. Because I know that some coaches are male, and that doesn't mean you can't do what Charlie's saying with the women-led activities. So I wanted to include that in, because I know K through 12 is a little bit different, but that is the end of our webinar. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you, Charlie and Ashley, for being our guests today. And I hope you all do well during this pandemic. Stay safe and keep gaming. All righty. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.